Our big story tonight, opposition coalition NASA today kicked off their 3 times a week anti-IBC protests, maintaining there will be no election if their demands are not met. President Uhuru Kenyatta has dismissed calls for talks with opposition leader Raila Odinga. All of this while IBC is on toes to have the fresh presidential election, which is now just 16 days away. So, will the election take place? All NASA's claims take the day. Our conversation continues with Felix Awor, who's an elections law expert. We also have Jared Okello representing the people of Nyando, Caleb Kositanyi representing the people of Soy constituency. But a lot has been said on this issue, including the Attorney General of this country speaking about what would happen if one candidate didn't show up on election day.
Not compulsory that any of the parties who initially put his name forward must participate. As you know, there are many candidates who ultimately don't show up on election day. Not to my knowledge, no election has ever been invalidated on the basis of where was the other party on election day. So I don't think we have a crisis of any nature.
So we have got 2 competing requirements of that of holding the elections within 60 days from the 1st of September, or if an election is not held within 60 days, then the end of Uhuru's occupancy of State House or any other office, all other offices, physical offices, and constitutional powers ends at the end of those 60 days.
Okay, so 2 interesting issues that have been raised there by the Attorney General and Senator James Orengo. But I first want to start with what the Attorney General has said and go straight to you, Caleb Kositanyi. According to the Attorney General of the country, he says there would be no crisis if any candidate chooses to not show up between now and election day, and even on election day itself. Why is Jubilee worried then about Raila's participation or not?
Yvonne, we're not worried about Raila's participation. We're worried about Kenya, the nation Kenya. And this election is like a football game. If you have 11 players are in the field on each side, and the referee blows the whistle, and the other team decides to stand by, and the other team scores a goal, you have a score. So we really don't have an issue with whether they participate or not. But what we are trying to do is to avoid an issue whereby they will go to court again and get a ruling that is not favorable to us based on technicalities and issues that are not there.
But Caleb, if he doesn't participate, then how would he then go to court? If he chooses to not be part of it, under what circumstances would he be going to a Supreme Court to talk about the election if he himself chooses to not be a part of the process? We
are talking about somebody who is a national crybaby. So you expect anything from Raila Odinga. He will definitely have to say something because he's looking for an exit. He doesn't want to go home and say, I lost this election free and square. Let Kenya proceed. Thank you to those who supported me. And that's the honorable thing that he should do. But I know he's not going to do it. I know he has traveled now. He wants the Baba while you are away thing. We'll wait for him to come back. But what we know is, as the Attorney General has said, there's going to be no lacuna. We are going to have elections on 26th. We know as Jubilee we have the numbers. Like we have the majority in Parliament, we have the majority in Senate, we have the majority MCS, we have the majority women reps, we have even majority of women governors elected. So we are ready for this election. And it's clear, Yvonne, that Jubilee and NASA is not ready. And I'm sure even I pity the other principals in NASA because I think now Raila is running the show on his own. I don't think Alonzo even has an idea what Raila is planning, neither does Musalia or Wetangula. But we as Jubilee, we are firm and ready. You can see we are busy campaigning. NASA are busy with press conferences. But we'll meet at the ballot on the 26th. All
right, Caleb, thanks for that. Felix, no crisis, says the AG. We've also heard from you a little earlier. You said that according to the law, if one candidate chooses not to participate based on the 2013 ruling, that there will be no election. So my question to you is, would we be then staring at a constitutional crisis? What would happen if, as you say, there will be no election on the 26th based on your interpretation? So what then happens to this country on the 1st? Who is president?
Well, I think and I need to stress this again, that the Supreme Court addressed this issue in 2013. I've just forwarded you the order of correction, Yvonne, for the record, and you'll be able to see. The reason why Jubilee, in my opinion, are worried is because somehow they're now beginning to internalize the implication of the Supreme Court ruling of 2013, which, for the record, and by the way, the Jubilee administration really supported. And contrary to what the Attorney General is claiming, the Attorney General is the chief government legal advisor. The jurisdiction to interpret the law does not rest with the Attorney General. And I think the court of a competent jurisdiction, and in this case, the Supreme Court addressed this issue and stated clearly that in the event of death or abandonment, then a fresh nomination will ensue, so there will be no election. That is the law, and you can take that to the bank.
So Felix,
now, what happens?
Felix, sorry, just to understand what you're saying, and for our viewers, because we need to take them step by step.
Yeah.
If we don't have an election on the 26th, then by the 31st, we're staring at what? A fresh process where we begin nominations yet again for candidates? Is that what you're saying?
If there is no election on the 26th, the question of the vacuum then arises. And in my reading of the Constitution, there are two roadmaps. One, as provided for by Article 142, which states categorically that the president, first of all, I think, and for the record, it must be understood that the powers that are being exercised by His Excellency the President are powers pursuant to Article 134, and that is temporary incumbency, and that is a fact. And Article 142 states that in the event, that the president shall serve and stay in office until a new president is sworn in, pursuant to Article 136 of the Constitution, 136(2). What it means is that is the election that we had on the 8th. Now, the process of electing the president are laid out in Article 138. And there are two scenarios. The president might win outrightly, in which case the swearing in and there is no challenge or petition. But if there is a petition and that petition succeeds, which is the case that we find ourselves in, then a fresh election must be held within 60 days. Now, as you pointed out from the outset, when lawyers are split over this issue, will the president exercise temporary incumbency ad infinitum? Does the Constitution intend that the president will exercise that power until eternity, or does it terminate within 60 days that the Constitution provides for that? A fresh election will be held, and a new president will be sworn in. Clearly, if we go beyond 1st of November, then it takes us to the roadmap number 2, which, contrary to what Honorable Jared Okello said, is not Article 139. It's actually Article 146 of the Constitution that deals with the vacancy in the office of the president. It may arise as a result of death, incapacity, Article 144, or impeachment, Article 145. Now, in the event there is a vacancy in the office of the president, then the deputy president shall act and discharge the functions of the office of the president for the remainder of the term. But however, if there is also a vacancy in the office of the deputy president, which is the case now, beyond 1st November 2017, some have argued, some lawyers, and that's why I say this issue has to be referred to court for interpretation, that temporary incumbency terminates on the 30th. Then if we invoke then Article 146, then it means that the Speaker of the National Assembly shall exercise the function of the office of the President for 60 days pending a fresh election.
Okay. And this fresh election would involve now anyone?
Now this...
Any candidate? I could get up and say I want to run for president after those 60 days during which the Speaker has been in charge?
My reading of the Constitution actually confirms that it should be open for everyone.
Okay.
What the Supreme Court dealt with in 2013 was a fresh election arising as a result of the invalidation of the president, and they were categorical that in that scenario, only the president-elect and the petitioners would be eligible to contest the fresh election.
All right, got that. Let's speak to Jared now for just the sort of political angle to this. Jared, Caleb Kositany and his fellow counterparts in Jubilee say, but look, you know, the constitutional provisions aside, NASA isn't looking like they're ready for an election or want to participate in it. We've seen Jubilee embark on campaigns yet again, traversing the country. In fact, NASA just cancelled a planned rally in Mombasa over the weekend. We understand Raila Odinga is in the UK at the moment, but there doesn't seem to be the push, and that you are already in that state of mind that there will be no election, and hence you're not going back to the electorate to seek their mandate once again.
Thank you, Yvonne. Of course, we are not worried. If elections will be done in line with the Supreme Court determination about strict adherence to the Constitution, the electoral laws and other enabling statutes, then we are ready any time to go into election and to defeat Jubilee. You realized what happened, Yvonne, just immediately after the Supreme Court verdict was rendered. The president, you know, ran amok. You know, he was in public rallies in other places, not very stable though. But, you know, that was a sign of panic because they know very well they didn't have the numbers. And as a result of the illegalities that were committed by IEBC, they were able to be declared winners. But you ask yourself one fundamental question, Yvonne. IEBC was found to have committed these illegalities and hence by extension causing Uhuru Kenyatta his win. The buck stopped at the doorstep of IEBC. The same Supreme Court found lack of any culpability on the part of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was the third respondent in the matter. So for us in NASA, we are saying if these illegalities could cause an entire nation the situation we are in at the moment, which is absolute gridlock, economic sabotage, and everything is not moving within this country. So we are saying in order not to get into another round of an electoral disorganization where electoral enterprise is being messed up by IEBC, we are saying let's clean our house, get into a clean election, and hence the verdict of IEBC as far as the president will be concerned will not be subjected to another round of Supreme Court proceedings. Now, you ask yourself, if IEBC that caused Uhuru his win is the same IEBC that NASA is saying should pave way, but Jubilee, in their wisdom, or lack of it, are saying the same IEBC that caused us our win must still continue to be in office. I mean, who is fooling who? For us, it's about cleaning the electoral merchandise so that when we get in, we get a clean, verifiable, credible, free, fair election.
Okay,
that
Jared,
is what we are standing for.
Jared, with respect to my very specific question then, is the sort of lack of campaign or not as perhaps big campaign that we're seeing on the other side indication that you perhaps are not willing to participate in this exercise? I mean, I know you've explained the issues that you've got with the IEBC, but some say, okay, you can have the issues with the IEBC, you can demonstrate, you can speak about all of these issues and go to the anniversary towers and also their headquarters around the country, that's fine. But on the other hand, you would be telling people that, listen, we have this process that's happening on this end, but here we are campaigning for your vote, and this is what we will do for you. And that the fact that that's not happening is indicative that you will not participate.
Well, that is a little far away from the truth. It is quite evident that after the August elections, nothing much has changed within the electorate. They made a determination, they voted in NASA, and that was tinkered by the Supreme Court because IEBC in collusion with Jubilee chose to snatch away our victory. So we are still sure of our numbers. Nothing much has changed. Now, you asked me about Mombasa when we had to hurriedly cancel our rally. You know, the electoral laws are also very clear. on where to be on the side of campaigns from your opponent. Now, when Jubilee realized that NASA was going to camp in Mombasa, they chose to also go to Mombasa, perhaps in a bid to create some clash with NASA adherents. I mean, we are not ready for this kind of business. We said, fine, let's give them room in Mombasa, do whatever business they want, buy as many losers as they can, and then later on, when dust shall have settled down, we will go and champion our manifesto to the people of Mombasa. So for us, it's not a sign of panic. We are prepared to go into any clean electoral process any day, including now.
All right.
All
Jared,
those irreducible minimums shall be respected.
Jared, a quick one, because I want us to start closing now. Speculation about this is being fueled by Raila's trip to the United Kingdom. Perhaps now that we have you here as a member of NASA and ODM specifically, you can clarify some of these issues for us. How long is he away? When does he return? I mean, you know what everybody is saying. He's away for 3 days, he's away for 3 weeks, he's away for 4 weeks, he will return on this date. But some saying that him leaving at this critical point may be suggestive that, you know, he's not interested in the process anymore.
Well, I began, Yvonne, by saying that there will be no election on the 26th. That was my opening remarks. Additionally, Raila has gone to, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has gone to the UK on a very serious business, a very serious undertaking on behalf of the country and on behalf of NASA coalition. If the grandstanding that we are experiencing shall continue, where Jubilee is also presenting pieces of legislation to be passed tomorrow in Parliament, some of which try to legitimize the illegalities that were found out by the Supreme Court, then Raila is saying, let me go and attend to more serious businesses until some little sense will be pumped onto the heads of Jubilee adherents. So I think it will be made public as to how long he's staying in the UK, because he's a national figure, he's a national icon. So that will be shared by the public. But what we are saying is that
Jared,
with this kind of state where Jubilee has stuck to his guns, IBC is still sticking to his guns, up and including coming up with very funny names in the name of Project Team. We are saying let him go and attend to other serious businesses as
Jared.
IBC and Jubilee sorts themselves in this country.
All right, thank you. Jared Okello, Member of Parliament for Nyando. Caleb, your final thoughts on this issue. It seems like at the rate at which it's going, it would be a walkover for President Uhuru Kenyatta. The Attorney General says there will be you know, no lacuna, there will be no crisis, there will be no constitutional crisis. So members of the Jubilee Party would be pleased with this news.
Well, Yvonne, I think first I would like to correct what Honorable Jared has said there, that Raila is traveling to the UK to represent Kenya. The only person who has the authority to travel and represent Kenya are those leaders who are elected by the people, according to Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya, where the sovereign will of the people of Kenya is exercised through their democratically elected leaders. So Raila is traveling as an individual, not to represent this country in any capacity. Number two, Yvonne, is we as Jubilee, as we have stated, we are ready for these elections. We have been prepared. We had an issue with the Supreme Court ruling to annul our victory, and we are happy that now the Kenyans have realized that we actually won the elections free and square. We are going to win this one again. And I think, Yvonne, we need, as politicians, we need to think about Kenya first. President Uhuru won these elections free and square. Raila has lost 4 elections now. And every time he has lost, he has asked that we change the IBC. And we have given in to his demands. But I think this is we have come to an end of this meeting his demands, because we have always been gentlemen. But I think this time it's a serious issue. He has taken this country back. Tomorrow we'll be in Parliament to pass laws as the representatives of the people. And we want to tell NASA coalition. They went to the Supreme Court. They got a verdict, which was a verdict of the majority of the judges who sat at the Supreme Court. They will also have to respect the majority of sitting members of Parliament, the majority of decisions made in Senate, the majority decision made by the people of Kenya. We're going to run this country as per the majority. And as Jubilee, we have the will of the people. We are ready for the elections. And as you said, Yvonne, those are your words. it's going to be a walk in the park for Jubilee and President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto.
All right, Caleb Kositanyi, thanks for that. Felix, your final words in about a minute or less, if you can. Are we staring at a constitutional crisis, or are we just fine?
No, well, there's clearly a crisis that everybody should understand. But let me first of all begin by saying that I'm one person who respects leadership and leaders of this country. And I think it's disrespectful to say that Raila Odinga represents no one. I think for Raila Odinga has borne serious pain and suffering more than anybody else in this country would ever begin to imagine. But that aside, they will be, I think the Constitution has tried to mitigate those crises, either by providing for in Article 146 that the Speaker can act in the event there is vacancy. But I think also one thing that I should point out that has not come out is the fate of the legislations that are currently before Parliament, the so-called election law amendment legislation. Yvonne, if you read the Supreme Court judgment of 2013, from paragraph 289 to paragraph 294, Chebukati, by allowing only Raila Odinga, Prime Minister Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta to contest the fresh election, has begun implementing that law. Now, the judgment restricted the participation to these two individuals. What it also did by inference is that it restricted the applicable law for the fresh election to the law as it existed when the first round was held. What it means, therefore, is that what is going on in Parliament is an exercise in futility. If you read that, other than their unconstitutionality or the unconstitutional nature, if you read paragraph 289 to 294, the applicable laws will be the laws as they obtained during the 8th August of 2017.
Okay. Constitutional crisis, yes or no? Just real quick.
I think we are staring at a constitutional crisis.
Okay.
But the country needs to come together. I think it's time for dialogue. And let it be remembered that every time we've gone as a country in the brink of the precipice, it has been political negotiation and political discussion that has pulled us back from the precipice.
All right, that's a good point to leave it. Thank you very much. Felix Owuor is an electoral law expert. Many thanks as well to Caleb Kositanyi, who's the Soy Member of Parliament, and Jared Okello, Member of Parliament for Nyando, joining us from our studios in Kisumu. That is a big story tonight. Are we staring at a constitutional crisis or not? Will there be an election or not in this country? One party continues to say they're not worried. The other says there will be no election. That's our big story tonight. It continues to unfold. Legal arguments continue to surround that issue. Many thanks as well to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, from herself, myself, and the entire team. Good night. KTN Prime is up next. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole.